welcome to episode 304 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 18th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast or on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United. On Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, you can find me at School Librarians United and the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. It is now my pleasure to introduce Learnix, which is our newest podcast sponsor. If you are overwhelmed with managing student research projects and wish that there were a better way to guide students towards credible sources and ethical research practices, then you need to try Learnix. Learnix automatically documents your students' research journeys, capturing their searches, website visits, and notes. Learnix then organizes the students' notes, creates perfectly formatted bibliographies, and even generates a snapshot report that reveals key insights into how the student conducts research. With Learnix, you can provide personalized feedback, identify research challenges, and teach information literacy skills more effectively. Visit Learnix.com to learn more and schedule a demo. If you mention that you heard about Learnix on School Librarians United podcast, you'll receive 20% off your subscription. And now for today's episode, True Crime Programming, and my conversation with Brandi Hartsell and Katie McNamara. I'm so excited. Katie and Brandi, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So friends, we are in a treat for today. We've got the dynamic duo, and the best part is we've never all sat together other than this one opportunity to come together and talk about a topic I know nothing about, but I brought my experts with me. So let's go ahead and introduce them. Friends, tell us about your libraries, the grades you serve, and some of the programs you offer. Brandi, let's go ahead and let's have you kick it off. Tell us about yourself and your library.
Sure. So I am a school librarian at a high school in East Tennessee. This is, I believe, my 9th year as the school librarian. And before that, I had a different life as a school counselor with grades K through 8 for 8 years. Then found myself in the library world, which I much prefer. So grades 9 through 12, we have about 1,200 students. And we are in a larger city, but in a suburban area of the city.
Got it. So I'm dying to know. Okay, this is probably a podcast first. Never have I ever met a school librarian who in a previous life was a counselor?
Yeah. I, as a teen, landed on school counselor because I had one that made a big impact on my life. But then when I got into it, and it turns out it wasn't really for me. But a lot of what I did do as a school counselor was with books and around books. And so one day I got an email from the local university that they had a program that was totally online that would get me the qualifications I needed to get my librarian certification. Did that and never looked back.
Well, and I have to imagine that your bibliotherapy, is that what they call it? A bibliotherapy is got to be like solid bibliotherapy. And am I right? Kathleen Glasgow, right? Kathleen Glasgow, absolutely. So absolutely spectacular. And I know for me, my personal growth goal is to support our student services and do a lot of that planning to support our students with the social worker, the school psychologist, and the counselors, and see how we can support one another and our students in the process. So fantastic.
Well, actually, since I was a school counselor, I still have a passion for it. So I do work with my school counselors very closely. When I'm told to choose a department for a school-wide thing, I always choose to join the counseling department. And we've been working on getting some small group bibliotherapy happening for a while. We still haven't gotten the grant yet to get the funding for what we need, but we've written some.
I get, and you know what? Sometimes we're playing the long game, right? So, Katie McNamara, thank you so much. This is your hat trick, your third time on the show. And friends, you'll remember Katie was on the show, episode 201, Library Science Students, and that's going to work in nicely with today's conversation. And then more recently, episode 292, Oh No, You Didn't, which is just a laugh riot. I do like this conversation. It was very, very fun, but definitely links in the show notes, friends. But Katie, would you introduce yourself and tell us, for those of us who haven't heard your earlier appearances on the show?
Yeah, hi, all. So I've been teaching for a long, long time. Now older than the students and eek gas the admin, but that's okay. I know what I'm doing. Got situated in library land in lucky 2013. Best job on campus. Love that. I am currently serving a high school in Central California. And I have like the dual world. So because I'm a little wackadoodle, because what teacher librarian isn't, I'm also a program director for a teacher librarian credential program that, yes, is also 100% online, Brandi, at Fresno Pacific University. And, you know, it's just helping people. And that's what we do. And we love. And I want to go back to like all the connections, Brandi. I love your heart with counselors. So, Amy, this might be like a really cool like future one. The books with the counselors. I am pulling in, of course, author we just mentioned, the latest, greatest, The Glass Girl. Just talked with my substance abuse counselor, and we're going to be digging into that. And it's all about helping the kids be the better versions of themselves.
Absolutely. And I think, the counseling center, oftentimes, again, along with your school psychologist and your social workers, this is a very important part of our school that it's all too often we're focused on the academics, but we really need to really center our students' well-being. And when you get that partnership with the school counselors, the therapists, and then throw in a librarian, I mean, that's a fantastic combination. We will absolutely talk that into reality. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how true crime has shaped your collection. So let's go ahead. Katie, can you give us an idea, if I walked into your collection right now, what about it would scream true crime?
Well, the sections, definitely. And then they're identified well. So I just got a special crime goober from Demco. I do like their little shelf identifiers. So we've got that rocking. And in the midst, so it takes a long time to do this, but we're coming to the ends of dramifying. So there is now this really cool mystery section, clear with it. And it's huge and it's gigantic and it's what people ask for. So yeah, it's by the front of the entrance right there to help them with that. And you got to have fun because I don't think there's such a thing as enough true crime books in the library. Wow. So how do you let the kids know? There was an announcement. Hey, just want to let you know there are new serial killers in the library. Come visit and meet them.
Well, and I happen to know our forensics class is doing research on the Innocence Project, and there is some crossover with they get very excited about the wrongfully accused as well as the serial killers. They're sort of, you're working on sort of polar extremes of what's going on here. I'm so curious because, friends, I will just throw this out there right now. As a high school librarian, I do not have a true crime section. I do not teach true crime. I do not have any sort of, and that's one of the selfish reasons that I wanted very much to have this conversation, because the two librarians who are joining us for the conversation today have already invested considerable time, money, and effort in creating a true crime collection program and generated that kind of readership, so that I'm hoping that the rest of us can learn from their expertise. So let's go ahead and Katie, would you start us off? Would you let us know, how has true crime shaped your collection?
It's really made me realize how important it is. So when I first started way back, the first 2 Dewey Decimals I learned, take a guess.
364.15.
Oh, yeah. Bonus points if you know the second one. Okay, no bonus points here, folks. Okay, so it was 796. Those were the first 2. So true crime and sports, like, oh my goodness. And even now, like, I go and I walk the stacks all the time, and I'm like, gosh, I'm a horrible librarian. Where are my true crime books? Like, oh, wait, no, I'm not a horrible librarian. They're just all out. So I've got to go ahead and buy some more. But an extra thing at the high school level that we need to be mindful of is reading the books. And I really can't stress that enough, because, well, my kiddos, and I'm not at a very affluent school, nothing against my students, just, higher socioeconomics, it's different with what you're working with. But my students, even though they're not that high, we're not doing the Ivy League cross campus and whatnot, they don't want the little 50-page books. They don't want the 100-page books. They want the books. So it's, the general content ones, but like sometimes the true crime gets a little too, because I still want to keep my job. So I do advise like reading some of those, but those books still fly off the shelves.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Fantastic. All right. So how about you, Brandi? Let me ask, I'd walk into your library. Yeah, let's talk about where and how exciting your true crime section is, because it sounds like you have clearly invested the time and the money in creating it.
Yes, so I'm going to start with saying that when true crime, I originally realized that my interest in true crime was having an impact on our collection and that it was unintentional. And that happened because I was working with a colleague who was teaching an AP US history class, and we developed an independent reading project that they would complete at the end of the semester. And that would include a presentation. So I show up on presentation day, and, more than half of the class has read a book about a murder. And my friend is like, I can really see your influence in our library collection. And I was like, yeah, it wasn't necessarily intentional to begin with. Just something that I find interesting. But now I have made sure all my true crime are at 364.15. So I want everything co-located within the section, even some stuff that would have maybe been in 900s, like presidential assassination things. I've put it over in 364.15 because I know that kids are looking for true crime. And then so they know how to get that way with, eventually I ordered the same Demco things that you were talking about, Katie. So they should be on the way, that little true crime sign. But I use the genre labels also that say true crime on the side. The spine all has that so that it kind of stands out on the shelf. And I also have visual book lists on my circulation desk, which includes a true crime one that we'll put in the show notes. And usually at least once a year, I do a display that's true crime themed with the caution tape and all of those things. So definitely not a secret that the librarian is a fan of true crime.
But, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think that oftentimes the librarian's bias is a good thing, because what we do is we are able to pour some of that personal passion into a space where we inhabit. And our students, you are tapping a legitimate interest. This is not something that is outlandish. It's not like let's be honest, when you look at the most popular podcasts out there right now, they're all true crime. All of them are true crime. And my feelings are not hurt. but that's not a bad thing. I love that you have been able to find a way to not just excite students, but also channel some of that personal interest into something. It's awfully coincidental. And I know I see that friends Lori Lieberman has been on the show to talk about her romance book club. And it is probably the most impactful program she has because there is that personal interest. You're invested in making sure this succeeds with your readers. So I love that. But let's go ahead. You started to talk about how this impacts your space. And so I do love, you mentioned that there are genre labels, that you have spine labels. Katie, how about you? Have you found a way to make this part of your collection easy for your students to find?
Definitely. So like we talked about the identification, that's key. I'm currently rearranging my library. So like someone walks in, it's a bit of a hyperventilation moment because there's 10,000 books on tables and I can't do anything else because there's 10,000 books on tables. Like it's organized chaos. There was just an event like, oh, we'll get that table. We'll just move the books. No, you will not touch my books. So doing that and collectively with my library science students, because I always love bringing our students into the layout or any choice really in the library that impacts them. And our mystery section is also going at the front of the library. And I'm not doing the full genre 5 with nonfiction, but we're doing friends with friends. So the fiction mystery is there. The true crime is right beside it.
Got it. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm in a situation where I walked into a building with, I'm going to just be honest, zero reading culture. I mean, my building, it's not something I've ever really gone into great depth about on this show, but I was brought in specifically with the request to build reading culture because we have none. And that was also because I came into a situation where there was no librarian. And so that makes sense, right? But I will say, the mystery section has been one of the easiest ways for me to attract a readership because those mystery books are fast. They are fast. They are not gargantuan. Most of them are not these tomes like our fantasy books are, that they can be. So you've got this very fast reading. And I see that there's got to be a lot of overlap with our readers between fans of mystery and fans of true crime. What do you notice?
For sure, because a lot of the true crime books, realistically, they're narrative nonfiction. So it's those moments you have to stop yourself, holy crap, this actually happened. And the best is from the beginning. And it still flies off of my shelves. It has the most hideous cover. I don't know why they haven't redone that one yet. But In Cold Blood, there's your classic slicer dicer narrative nonfiction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What do you think, Brandi?
I would say the same thing. Talking about the size of books, Helter Skelter, that's a tomb, but it circulates. And whether there might be things in it that are a little controversial, perhaps, but my copy came from the English department, so I'm going to say I'm justified in having it. But yes, I would also say that students who like true crime are also drawn to mystery. I know we haven't quite gotten there yet, but eventually we're going to discuss my class, and a lot of people show up on day one ready to talk about true crime, but they're like, Criminal Minds is my favorite show. Not true crime, but so as long as there's a mystery, they're going to be invested.
I'm really curious. Like I said, I do not have a true crime section, and selfishly, that's one of the reasons why I was so excited about this conversation. I certainly will start to make it a goal of mine. We're going to work our way towards that. But let me ask you, when it comes to you personally, what was it that initiated this desire to have a true crime program in your space? And let's have Katie, why don't you start us off?
Well, I think it's the same. Brandy's already shared a little bit, but like one doesn't just do this without already loving true crime. Like there's another series halfway connected to true crime. Oh yeah, I'm all on it. Yeah, and so all about building that excitement. And it's so easy to get excitement about anything if you have it yourself. And true crime definitely is there. Not that, they're not how-to books. I'm not advocating that, but like we definitely have. It's fun. And you think about it, all of these different things that our brain naturally does, that's true crime. We look at something, we want to make sense of it. That's true crime. That's the cornerstone of starting to figure out what in the world happened, what's going on. Even those of us at school, some of us have been like, "Oh, what the is going on?" You're starting to figure out some true crime stuff. Not the how-to part, but like you're those basic levels of dissecting into the minutia. Like, why did this happen? Like, motive is key. We always want to know why people do what they do. Like, I don't know, because we're all like nosy, curious people, but like. Yeah, digging in and then, oh, that was your choice? What's your evidence there? Like, it all gets interconnected.
I love it. How about you, Brandi? How did this all come to happen?
For me, obviously, I already had a personal interest in true crime. I already shared about not even recognizing my own personal preferences impact on the collection, perhaps. But for me, I already had this personal passion, and it's just been a series of coming across someone else who was doing something similar and then realizing I could do that too. The first thing I did academically to tie in my interest in true crime, there is a high school in the city where I grew up in Tennessee. It's called Elizabethton High School. And a few years back, one of the teachers at Elizabethton High School, he taught a sociology class. And what he did for the semester was his class of students built a criminal profile for the serial killer of the Redhead murders, which partially some of the victims were found in Tennessee. They have, in the course of their profiling, renamed the killer as the Bible Belt Strangler. And they produced their own podcast. They got to speak with an FBI profiler who looked at the profile they came up with, said they did a great job. And I was like, I want in on this. So my friend, the sociology teacher, and I collaborated to make a much smaller version of what they did that we took 3 or 4 days to look at a series of crimes and the process of criminal profiling and made a profile up. So that was super successful. The kids really loved it. They're really engaged. So then we spread out to, I'm going to do a project with you about the juvenile justice system. And we're going to talk about whether juveniles should be tried as adults. And we're going to talk about the origins of the justice system itself. So we had multiple projects going. Then you will see in the tagged in the show notes is my Murder in the Library PD presentation, and that's regarding my True Crime Tuesday programming that I started after coming across another librarian on Facebook that was doing something similar. So I started that program.
We're going to dive into that. Before we go any further, because I'm really curious, do either of you have forensics or criminal justice related classes in your school? I'll be honest, in my school, the forensics offering is a semester-long class. It's taught by science teachers, and it is the most popular science class we have. There are more sections of forensics taught in our science department than any other science class in our building, which I think means I need to start building a true crime collection in my library. So let's go ahead and let me ask you, Brandi, do you have, you mentioned this other school, but so does your school have a criminal justice or a forensics program?
So the original collaborations I was doing were with our psychology and sociology class because we did not have forensics or criminal justice. And this semester is actually the first time that we are offering a forensics type science class, which is called scientific research, and it is being taught by one of our health science teachers who is also passionate about forensics. And we have collaborated to talk together. We're going on a field trip together next month. So we are definitely going to be collaborating as that program grows. But again, that's the first time we're offering it. So previously, the only class specifically related to crime is mine.
Interesting. Well, I will say, as an aside, in the state of Michigan, it is all of a sudden psychology has pretty much dropped off the map because it is considered a social science, and you now need a minor in order to teach it. And I don't know if that's the case in any other in any other state, but I'm a social studies teacher. That degree allowed me to teach all the electives, and now here we are in 2025. You must have a college minor in psychology to teach it. And so all of a sudden, there are some things that are not going to happen, at least in the schools I'm working with, because that's really a bar that's fairly high. How about you, Katie? Can I ask, in your school, do you have criminal justice related classes? And if so, have you ever collaborated?
We don't. So instead, I basically do programming that is the true crime.
And that probably makes you an instant hero. You're not competing. I mean, I like this. I love whenever we can.
Oh, it's a competition. It is so a competition because no. This is my evil plan all the time is for the students to beg their classroom teacher to come to the library.
I see.
That's what I meant by competition.
So I love that. It's always great to collaborate. We always want to be those heroes to those classroom teachers. We also want to be able to provide things for our students that aren't being made available in the classroom. So I also see those opportunities for us to win friends and fans. And at the end of the day, supporting our students is at the core of what we do. But I love, Katie, you're using your students to get to your teachers.
Yeah, so the collaboration is still totally happening. I'm always reaching out, I also and mass emails to everyone. Hey, we're getting ready for this year's crime scene. Do you want a part of your class embedded? And sometimes it's like, hey, we have this unit coming up. Can you do something with this? Like Hero's Journey, that person reached out to me. 1 year I've had the PLTW teacher reach out to me. So we worked in robotics, all of these different things. So as I'm in the midst of developing it, there's all of this opportunity for all the classes to get involved. And then slight bonus for us when I'm asking, hey, do you want me to do this work for you? That's passive advocacy as well. Like, hey, there's some cool stuff I'm doing. Don't you want to be involved? And we just added environmental science this year. And that teacher's already like, okay, I don't even know because this is their first year teaching it, but I want in. So like, okay, we can definitely bring some earth something in.
You have programming which you have offered that is true crime inspired. Let's learn about Crime Scene Camp, because I am excited because this sounds like something that other librarians might be able to start to incorporate in their space.
So my Crime Scene Camp is offered in the summer times with budget approval, blah, blah, blah. So the students have already experienced the programming in the library, and there's a handful that get the special invites. And of course, they can come to me and ask if they want. When we say invite interview, it's just, hey, do you really want to spend the time and do this work with me? So a group of students, about 2 weeks, in the summer, we're working and they're building the crime scene that's going to be used that following school year.
Oh, that's so cool. All right. You mentioned the summer, and I was like, truly, I've misheard you. Like, what are you talking about? All right. So pause. So during the summer, you get a bunch of, so these would have to be, so you're not working with seniors because they've already left the building.
We
Yes.
have the option, but like, yeah,
Okay.
not, once in a while I get some, but I'm like, I kind of don't want them because, we talk, oh, no. Like, we talk about the advocacy. There is something about the kids like, hey, come, we got this crime scene up and hey, I did it. Hey, this is what I did.
It's called Crime Scene Camp. And am I correct that this is held right after the school year ends, or is this right before the school year begins?
It's held after the school year ends because we do the shutdown for custodial needs and blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So you are still in June. And then when you get back to school, presumably in August, your crime scene is ready for the school year to begin. All right. So let me ask you, what does that look like when you start school and the students all arrive for crime scene camp? If your students have put this into place, what is it that the rest of your student body is benefiting from based on what your students did over the summer?
So the rest of the student body, they get to work on solving the crime.
Oh, I see. All right. Now, forgive me. During crime scene camp, are they writing the murder, or is this one that has already been created?
No, they're doing it all. So we make a profile of our victim or the person that did the thing, depending on where we want the focus. They figure out all the extra auxiliary that needs to be there because, okay, so they've gone through the programming first. So let's back up a little bit. So in the spring is my true crime programming where they have to figure out what happened. And so there is always a physical crime scene in the library. Sometimes there's a body, sometimes there's not a body. My darlings like when there's death. There's not always death because that could still be a crime, but they see stuff and trying to just make sense of the things. And they work through the various pieces, different items of evidence. Maybe it's a medical report, different things that we're looking at. And then we've got witness statements and all these different things that help tie the story together. And they got to figure out what happened and not just like, hey, the dude died. Like, really? But have some rationale behind it, that evidence piece, supporting it, explaining it away. And so the students have experienced all of that. So now that they've gone through it, they're like, oh, yeah, I want to be in on this.
Oh, that's so cool. So presumably the kids who participate in your camp have been able to participate in the programming as students going in and experiencing it at the beginning of the school year.
Yes. And I get a lot of students that go through it because, well, it's taking up space. So, of course, anyone walks in there going to see, oh, there's a bunch of junk on the floor. What's going on? Like, funny you should ask. So while I do have some teachers that totally want to be involved with it, I've had some teachers that they use that as their final exam because it totally ties into all of the standards with what you're having to do. And then there's some teachers that, no, we're not doing it. But students will still come in at lunch, after school, before school, and go through the steps themselves.
Wow. I love that this is a sort of, and it's housed in the library, which gives the larger student community a reason to come in. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, what's going on here? And so it seems to me like that would be a wonderful way to bring in students who might not necessarily identify as true crime readers or true crime fans, but it would be a really sort of nice entry, sort of a gateway into the true crime collection that you're working on building and the programming. I love that. So let me ask, Brandi, how about you? Because I'm so curious as to what you have done to create and teach a course in your school focused on true crime.
Yes. So again, it was a situation where I heard about someone else doing something similar and then decided to do it myself. Another teacher in our school district was going to teach a true crime genre literature class. And she reached out to me on social media and said, "Would you be interested in helping me plan?" And I said, "Say less. I'm in." Um, and then it turned out that my administration wanted me to teach an elective. Um, anyway, the next time I had previously taught a young adult literature elective, and didn't really want to do that anymore. It went super well the first time I did it. The second time, I did not have very much fun. So I was like, I don't really want to do that again. And so I just asked, could I do this? And they said yes. So then I just got to work building my own curriculum. And I use the Tennessee State Standards for genre literature as well as the AASL, National Standards for Learners, to develop my curriculum. This is the fourth time I'm teaching the class, I think, and it has been evolving as we go. But the important thing to note about my class is though it's called true crime genre literature, we don't do very much reading because we're more looking at true crime storytelling in all of its forms. So the texts that we use are usually documentaries, podcasts, even true crime content on social media. That's a big focus for us actually because we talk a lot about the ethics of true crime storytelling. And so that's how it happened. It has been the most requested class at my school since I started. Um, I'm currently the only one teaching it, so 70 kids max can take it each year. And I'm always maxed out. I have 35 every semester.
So you have to grade. I mean, you're a teacher of record. Oh, wow. So forgive me. Now, most librarians would feel this as an imposition. I would feel this as an imposition. It has been 20 years since I've been a teacher of record. And yet I appreciate that around the country, it is not unusual for librarians to be asked to take on some sort of teaching responsibility. The fact that you get to teach something that you designed is lovely. Forgive me, this invites the question, are you teaching in your library? And what happens to your space when you're busy?
So this is the biggest issue that we're still figuring out how to resolve because currently, yes, I do teach the class in my library. Um, and I'm of the opinion that teaching this class cannot and should not detract from me or my space serving the rest of the school population. So, in the event that I need to collaborate with another teacher on something different at the time while my class is meeting, then I would just make sure that the assignment they have that day is something they can do independently and then either have an aide watch my class elsewhere or they just have them working independently in the same space. I often have to relocate my class if there's like a thing that needs to happen in the library that other people are involved with. Um, and I'm still working on trying to get them to give me a classroom to use so that that's just always where I am and the library space is available if needed. But that hasn't happened quite yet. So as of right now, we're in the library and it works okay because I do always have, as I mentioned, 35 students. And then I also will get students assigned to me as library assistants. So I'm also responsible for having my eyes on them and them being in my space. So a regular classroom size might not really accommodate all that.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're solving a lot of problems, but they haven't quite figured out how to give you adequate support because those dueling roles, you don't get to turn an off switch on, and say, oh, I'm not available right now to do that. And it sounds like this is a work in progress.
It definitely is a work in progress, especially in terms of the room and the space. Like this year, our district has moved to a new model, and all of our high schools are becoming academies. And this year, our school, just our freshmen are in an academy, and the freshman academy has all of these experiences that are required experiences. And they were just in the library all the time last semester. And so my class shows up and they're like, where are we today? You just got to go find whatever classroom is written on the door. So that logistical thing is an issue, but I love teaching the class.
Excellent. All right. Well,
I really enjoy it.
I think that that's vitally important, and it sounds like your administration recognizes the value that you bring, both as a librarian and educator. So work with what you got. So, Katie, I'm awfully curious. We all have to be selective in how we spend our money and our time. And listeners are tuning in and wondering, why is this emphasis on true crime in your collection and your programming so meaningful?
Because it's all the things. Full stop. No. But seriously, like, you got a teacher that's complaining to you about, like, oh, research. The kids don't like to do research. Oh, I don't want to grade a research paper. Well, don't assign a damn research paper. There's a lot step. But we come into this like, oh, come to me. We will do all the research, because literally this crime scene investigation, it's the gateway to research. So I've got the setup. There's all the physical evidence. So there you go. Start listing your evidence. Start making some assumptions, some groupings of things. So you're even synthesizing the physicality of things. And oh, there's some stuff that has words on it. Maybe you don't know what that big word is. Or 1 year okay, so the kids always surprise me. Honestly, sometimes I just clean up my son's room, and that's the crime scene. My son's like, hey, Mom, is it crime scene time? Because my room's kind of clean right now. Well, there was an Arizona tea can, and kids were Googling the ingredients to see if in that flavor, the Arizona tea could have a correlation to the issue that was happening.
All right. But I love that you have tapped on this student's inquiry and research, but given it a true crime spin. So for students, they may not perceive this as research skills when it's sort of it's in the sort of it's true crime, and they're just trying to come up with the solutions to what they see in front of themselves, but at its core they're using research skills.
Totally. So I'm guiding them through the inquiry process. Basically, we start off with looking at the crime scene and making those connections and what ifs and well, what do you think now? And they also have to generate questions before they can go to the next stage. And those questions are researchable questions.
Very true. Very true. So how about you, Brandi? You know, I have to imagine you've got colleagues who have some questions when it comes to such a macabre sort of obsession that you have. Forgive me, but I can tell you clearly are invested in this emotionally. But, you know, at the end of the day, if I were an educator in Brandi's building, I'd be awfully a little annoyed at how incredibly popular your program is, and yet what you've done is successfully tap a student interest.
Yeah, for me, it's important because it's my own personal passion, and anything, as Katie mentioned earlier, anything that you're passionate about, it's going to be easier for you to get other people passionate about. But I also consider it it's really all just a part of my secret agenda to make sure that all of our students are graduated civic-minded and critical thinkers, because the the most important lessons that I want you to learn from your time in my class are vote every time you can and inform yourself first. Don't believe everything you see, read, or hear. And then the third one I throw in for free, when do you talk to a police? When do you ask for a lawyer? Before you say anything else. So those are things that I think we're really lacking. Our students don't know how to do, especially critical thinking. I mean, our country is just, we're not doing it overall. And so it's really just my secret way to teach them to be critical thinkers and to realize the importance of being civic-minded and using their voice and questioning what is true and what isn't, and how they can make a difference in things that they may not agree with.
Wow, you better be careful. You're going to end up teaching more than 70 students a year. I love that you have been able to tap students' interest, because I think right now I watch my teachers regularly struggle to try and engage our students because they're just not connecting with the content that's being taught in class. And forgive me, but oftentimes the behaviors I see exemplified is this desire to just get done with whatever it is that's in front of them. They are effort adverse. Our students tend to be very selective in where they, use their energy. And when it comes to standard assignments in class, this is really about just getting past them so that they can focus on what is truly important to them, which, P.S., is not class. Yes, Katie.
Yeah, totally what you just said. But the most critical thing there is classroom management begins with instructional design. It totally does. And like Brandi's hitting, like, yes, school should be fun. Why not? We can do all of these things. And even Brandi mentioned that bit about knowing what's real or not. So even with my true crime programming, there's red herrings. Well, that's what source is credible, what source isn't credible. All these little minutia skills really are big. And anything, you could teach it in the most boring fashion. But also true, anything you could teach in the most exciting fashion. Which class would the kiddo rather be in?
Got it. That's so true. That's so true. So I'd love to know, we all set goals for ourselves, and that's because our students deserve it, and we know we're capable of always doing better. So I'd love to know, moving forward, it's 2025, what goals do you have when it comes to your true crime programming? Brandi, you've started to talk a little bit about this already.
Yeah, so my ultimate goal with my class, as I mentioned, I want them to walk away with not only building their academic skills, because we are doing a lot of writing, we're doing a lot of analyzing, but we're also building up that critical thinking and just the idea that we should be more civic-minded, and question things more. I also have a personal goal to bring back a form of true crime programming that I did previously that I no longer do, which I referenced earlier, is called True Crime Tuesday. And that was every Tuesday, students were invited to bring their lunch to the library and hear me tell them a true crime story, which we would then discuss at the end. It was very popular. The reason I let it go is because it was just so much work, because I had to research each individual crime myself and write the story that I'm going to tell and create the slide presentation. But at this point, the kids who saw those presentations are long gone, so I can go back and recycle. So I'm hoping to bring that back this year, because it was the reason I want to bring it back is it brought so many new people into the library that weren't coming otherwise, and it gets students the opportunity to connect with me and with each other on something that they're passionate about. So my personal goal, bring back True Crime Tuesday.
Very cool. And how about you, Katie? Do you have things that you'd like that are on your horizon?
So I'm going to tweak the question a little bit because it wouldn't be me if I didn't. So I had a goal. It was a beautiful goal. I would just create 4 crimes and have this set up. High school is 4 years. Bam, done. Could just recycle. And bam, I'm on autopilot. Even that idea, crimes in the box. The librarian wants it. Okay, it can just travel to your school. And that works out. And that traveling thing can still happen. But it's a failed goal. Because how much my students get involved, even this last summer, because we were doing major remod, crime scene camp was not even a possibility, but I still have students involved in helping. They help figure out who the person is. They help write suspect statements. My suspects, the picture, they don't get to go talk to the teachers, but I've got pictures of, the counselor. I have some teachers who have been a suspect from the beginning of this, and they eat up who, am I the villain this year? What's going on? So that excitement and whatnot, I can't get from that packaged crime. Or I told you, the new class that we have on campus. Well, now I'm going to shift to accommodate that a little bit. And yes, the civicness is so important. So another piece I bring in is we're always breaking stereotypes. Well, what does that look like? Well, it's based on what the current trends are, what the issues are. So when vaping was going all off the hook, yes, that was a piece brought into this. So the autopilot is great, and my steps of planning are on autopilot now, but the actual thing, no, it has to be relevant, right?
Absolutely. So you've got a bunch of people tuning in right now who, like me, are absolute rookies, newbies. We have a desire to create these programs, but have, really just a smattering of understanding. What would you recommend? What advice would you give to school librarians who are tuning in and interested in replicating the success you've had in your respective spaces? Katie, let's kick it off with you.
Bug me. Totally. Let's get on a call and go through it. But realistically, if you don't want to call me right away, I won't cry too much. But in the handy dandy show notes, so funny you should ask this, Amy, is a guide to help you plan your very own crime scene. When I first came over this, I went to a conference and someone was talking about okay, how do you do it? Well, I just do it. These names I had for that person, literally just stayed in my head. That does not help me. So I'm all about backwards mapping, getting to the minutia. What's important? What do I need? Building my character's backstory. What does that look like? Well, I need on paper is like a form now. I can go ahead and start plugging things in and do that development. So you have access to that in our handy dandy show notes to kick you off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, friends, you're going to want to make sure, like all episodes, to check out the show notes, because this is where it's the repository of everybody's expertise, right? So, Brandi, help us out also, because you are generously going to share your expertise in our show notes as well. What would you recommend listeners tuning in who would like to start to become as popular in their building when it comes to true crime as you are?
Well, it kind of depends on which route you want to go. Again, you're going to see in the show notes some resources related to my true crime programming, which is really easy to replicate. True Crime Tuesday. You can do however you want to tell your own stories. If you even could do YouTube videos, if you were able to find one that is short enough to get screened in a lunch period. So all the intel on how I did that, how I made it happen, and which standards I was actually meeting by doing that is in the presentation linked in the show notes. And you'll also see a copy of my syllabus for my true crime class if that is something you're interested in. And yes, please reach out to me. I am happy to share anything, and I love to talk. I do not mind the sound of my own voice. So you are feel free to reach out to me, and I will talk to you for hours.
I know nothing about that, friends. I'm just a shrinking violet here on the wall. I really never know what to say. And I really am rather cowardly when it comes to expressing myself. So Brandi, I'm curious, because you did mention that you have done some writing for Knowledge Quest. Is that right?
Yes, I did some writing for Knowledge Quest, and a couple of my posts were true crime related. It looks like they may have taken down some of the older posts, but the one that I posted called More True Crime Books for Teens, that was published in 2022, is still available, and I'll get that link for you for the show notes.
I appreciate it. Friends, I'm so grateful for your time today. Social media is always a mystery, but I'm hoping that you will let listeners know the best place to find you on social media. So let me ask you, Brandi, what is best if listeners want to reach out?
So I can be found on Instagram at bookishbrandy with an I _TN. You can also reach out to me via email at librarianbrandihartsell at gmail.com. That's Brandi with an I again.
Perfect. And we'll put those links in the show notes. And Katie, how about for you? What is your favorite place to be on social media? How can listeners reach out to you with questions?
Seems all things keep on changing. So I am most active currently on Blue Sky, and that's Katie J. McNamara. And whatever the dot thingy is. Yeah. But there's extra stuff right now.
Perfect.
So if you were following me before, yay, I got to keep my handle. And other emails and whatnot will be in the show notes.
Outstanding. Friends, thank you so very much. I wish you a very wonderful 2025 and best of luck with the second half of the school year. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. Be sure to visit Learnix at www.learnics.com to learn more and schedule a demo. If you mention that you heard about Learnix on School Librarians United podcast, you'll receive 20% off your subscription. Thanks to this week's polar vortex and school cancellations in the Midwest, I am currently juggling several outlines and tentative recording dates. You can be sure our upcoming episode will showcase amazing school librarians sharing their strategies and resources. I hope you will tune in.